I wanted to just sort of touch base on watermarks really quick. And I don't want you to feel like you have to watermark your stuff, but you can, and sometimes it's nice in terms of, it just puts your name out there. So I'm just going to show you, I've done mine a little bit different because I paid for a really, when I say pay, I mean like $20 for an online logo design, but there's a lot of really good free ones, and you can do it in Photoshop. So when I do mine, I really like getting sort of a logo, which is just like a PDF or a JPEG file that I can then just insert over everything and change the opacity. So I put it in different places, but it's going to be the same at every one. Because what you think you want to do is start getting sort of a cohesive, sort of consistent, sort of personal branding, where it looks the same. Like people who do a lot of photography, it doesn't look different every time. They find a watermark, they run with it, and it kind of becomes like their digital stamp. So, sorry? What? Yeah, so yeah, if you look at some of the ones in our room, which doesn't help to screencast people, Richard had played with his a few times and settled on that. Jocelyn has one that's quite recognizable as hers, but now she's thinking about changing. Actually, I think the person in my class who was the best at it the last couple of years are Alicia's. And she's got one on the top right, but she's really clever at putting them in really crafty places. So there's a couple ways you can do it. The way, I don't actually do it in Photoshop a lot because I don't want to have to do it differently every time because I'm lazy. But if you're less lazy and you want it to look custom every time, in Photoshop you would just click text. You're going to go where you want it. Come on, Photoshop. Let's work. Text. Go. Okay, so then you're going to change your points because usually up until 72 you don't even see it. So I'm just going to put... I've inserted the copyright symbol, which I just took from a text document and put copyright, but it could just be like whatever. I could also play with it. Maybe I'll do 2 lines and I could put like a line between them or whatever. There's a lot of ways you can be, and you could build like shapes around it or whatever. But if I center that, I think I probably want that a little bit bigger. Let's say, just for now, just so this is really ugly, but you get an idea. The reason I don't like Photoshop is I'm not a super huge fan of what they have for fonts, but if you like their fonts, good for you. You want to kind of position it at a place where it's not going to be like, if I put my watermark like right here, that looks like really ugly. So you kind of, the general rule of thumbs is top right, top left, bottom right. But you can change, once you get in there, you can change the color. I could also warp it if I wanted to, which means like you drag one of the ends up or one of the ends down. The other piece is then if you wanted to add something else to it, you just click the arrow when you're done. I could also add like a line. So if I wanted to be like, Richard did this really, really well, better than I did actually. It's kind of like a square, but it's a line. But there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can make it work. But what I don't like if you do it on Photoshop is that you kind of have to do it every time, because the problem is you could make an action to redo it, but it's going to plunk it in the exact same space. So the place that I think is a good place for you guys, unless you have credit cards and you're feeling like you're super wanting to spend money on it, I actually like flaming text, which sounds kind of funny, but if you go to if you just go to Google and type in flaming text, they're free for personal use. And I will say that when you look at these, they look super ugly, but you have a lot of options within them to make them look way less ugly. So, because when you first, you're like, I don't want the Shrek one, it's really, really bad. But I'll show you what I mean once you get into it. You can also, like, some of them save as GIF files, so you can, like, have little video animations. Like, I'm not sure why you would want dripping blood for, like, a watermark. So have a peek through. There's a ton of them, but you can customize a lot within it. So let's say I'm going to pick, I don't love steel, but I'll show you what I mean. So if I did this, I could import my copyright thing, or I could just put my name. I like the scripts here a little bit better than I do on Photoshop. You've got quite a lot of like different options that give you a little more creative control over what it looks like. So they go on, they're a little funkier. I'm not a big fan of the Photoshop sort of font collection. Okay, we're gonna be Jenkins. It'll make the changes for you right away. The highest you can go is 200 before they're gonna say I want a credit card. And really you don't need much more than 200 when you're just inserting a watermark onto a photo, but it's I keep it like 199 or 200, because if I click over here, now they want a credit card. which of course they do because that's how they make their money. You could add really ugly emoticons, but I would suggest not because I think it would make it super cheesy. You can choose all of the colors within it. I would really recommend you make two, and I would make one that's white and I would make one that's black, and that gives you the diversity depending on the photo you're putting it on. So like if you put it on a dark photo, you're going to want to pick, I usually pick a white background because I feel it's the most versatile with a little bit of darkness. Maybe I don't want a gradient, maybe I just want whatever. I'm not a big fan of this one, but we're going to run with it because I'm committed now. You can also decide like how much of a shadow or how little of a shadow you want. So if you see what I mean, you've got like a lot of different options within it. You could make a reflection, which I don't think you really want, but you could if you wanted to. You could give it a glow, and there's a slight sort of different option for every logo that you make. Now there's a couple critical things you're going to want to remember or you're going to get really frustrated. Your background needs to be transparent. Otherwise you're going to have Brooke Holler on a piece of white and it's going to look like this really ugly stamp on your picture, whereas this will just put the text over. Image, I would go PNG. You could go, oh, they don't have JPEG anymore. Don't go Photoshop because it's just had a nightmare of compatibility problems, but I'd go PNG and then you create the logo. If you just say it's for personal use, which really it is unless you're like selling something, which we're not at this point, then you just download. If you wanted to do commercial use, you could pay $16, but I wouldn't really bother with it. Make sure that you save it and not open it. Give it a home. See, now I have a file that I can import right into Photoshop, so I could get rid of, I'm just gonna leave that there. Oh rats, my screencasting tool is all, where do I get to edit without this? How do I get there? Can I drag you? Okay, there we go. Okay, so then you just do, you're going to open it like any other Photoshop file, wherever it was that you saved it. Okay, so you're going to do the same thing as if you were working in layers. So you're just going to do your select tool, you're going to go edit, you're going to do copy. And this is what I mean if I just had the white background, edit paste, sorry. It would have like a giant white square behind it, which would be super, super ugly. If you want to move it around, you then can go here. If you want to make it bigger, you're going to do the same thing as you would in layers. You're going to go edit, and you're going to go transform and scale, and that gives me a chance. And it's always going to look a little bit fuzzy until you're okay with it. So until you click on something else and it's going to ask you to apply, then it gets crisp again. The other thing I usually always do, I find they like kind of like puke out at your face and they're really bold when they're first done. I'll generally change the opacity a little bit of it just to blend it a little bit with the background color, and I do that with pretty much all of them. I would recommend, I like having a logo with a transparent background because it's just file, paste, open instead of having to like mess around every time in Photoshop with fonts that I don't actually like. So I would say at least try to get a watermark. I was on like my 20th watermark before I found something that I liked, but have it represent kind of what you want it to be. Like this obviously here, this is a little more serious of a font. This is like I'm super fun and I'm exciting. So kind of look at the fonts and say, what do they say about my personal brand? So that's kind of a quick